Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. And our top story tonight, new questions about conflicts of interest among state lawmakers. This week, an Arizona Republic investigation looked into the connection between the nonprofit Chicanos por la Casa and the state legislature. Turns out the nonprofit had 4 members of the Arizona House of Representatives on its payroll. These 4 members are Democratic Representatives Robert Meza, Alma Hernandez, Cesar Chavez, and Lorenzo Sierra. All 4 deny anything improper and say the work is unrelated to their legislative duties. But the nonprofit wouldn't say what the lawmakers do for them, and that the lawmakers themselves aren't saying much about how much they're getting paid, raising a lot of questions about transparency. And joining me now to discuss this is Ray Stern, the Arizona Republic reporter who broke this story. Thank you very much for stopping by here today, Ray, to kind of explain this. First of all, let's just start off. How did this story come about? You start your story off talking about some sort of revelation in August.
Right. Well, the story came about, and I got a tip, basically, that David Adami, the CEO and president of Chicanos por la Causa, had made this disclosure about these 4 legislators being on his payroll, working on contract, during a pitch that he was making for part of $90 million that the governor had given to House and Senate Democrats of COVID relief money. They were allowed to spend it any way that they wanted to, but they had to sort of vet the people that they were going to give it to. And Chicanos por la Casa was making a pitch for some of that money when he made this disclosure.
And let's talk a little bit, too. I want you to kind of go through some of the rules there about conflicts of interest. There doesn't seem just in itself problematic that lawmakers would be having other jobs. It's a citizen legislature. Most of them do have other jobs. What makes this so problematic?
Well, that is a good question. I mean, this case kind of is about 2 things. One is it's unusual that there were 4 legislators working for one single nonprofit, and then it also gives us a chance to talk a little bit about the disclosure and conflict of interest rules that the legislature has that are kind of known to be fairly weak. So there are laws that and rules that the legislature works under to prevent conflicts of interest and make the body look more credible for the public. And essentially what these do is they make it impermissible and illegal to sell your influence as a legislator for compensation.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea of that. But how many times are, lawmakers disclosing conflicts of interest? I've been down there for a few years myself, and it's so rare. I really can't remember off the top of my head the last time I've seen it.
Well, as you point out, this is a citizen legislature, so they need day jobs, and so there's, potential conflicts of interest everywhere. But what the rules and the law says is that if a bill or something that you're doing as a legislator is going to affect more than 10 people, then it's not a substantial conflict of interest, and then you don't have to abstain from voting or fill out a disclosure form. This is a little bit soft, though, and there are some legislators that sort of feel that they need to fill out disclosure forms, even if this is a question of whether it's going to be more or less than a class of 10. Their lawyers probably advise them on whether to do this. And so what we had last year, or for the last 2 years, there were 17 abstentions and disclosures out of hundreds of bills that were put out there. And the legislators that I was writing about, they didn't disclose anything for the Chicanos por la Causa compensation that they were getting. But one of them, Alma Hernandez, did put in a disclosure, which I thought was interesting. And she disclosed that a bill that she was working on could affect her landlord. And I thought that was interesting because she didn't also put in any kind of disclosure for the actual job that she's doing for Chicanos por la Casa.
And we're talking about Democrats currently right now. You've got one of their top candidates running for governor, Katie Hobbs, just put out a big transparency piece asking for more transparency from the state lawmakers, from the state legislature. So it is definitely big on the radar screen for the Democratic Party. So when you went to go talk to them and ask them like what they were doing, how much money they were making from this, I'm sure they were nothing but forthcoming, correct?
Well, that's not correct, actually. And this is part of the interesting aspect of this story is the lack of transparency here. And so I think the public is right to wonder how much money is Chicanos por la Casa paying each of these legislators. The annual financial disclosure forms that they have to fill out, and 3 of the 4 did fill out and put their CPLC compensation on there. It only requires that they they state whether they made more than $1,000 in a year from an entity, and so they could have made $50,000, and that wouldn't be something the public gets to know about.
Yeah, and I do kind of want to go through a little bit. Chicanos por la Casa it's a legitimate organization. A lot of people would say it's a very important nonprofit organization. Can you kind of explain to our viewers a little bit about some of the work that they do?
Sure, and that can't be overlooked. This is an important nonprofit. It's one of the largest Latino nonprofits in the country. It started 52 years ago here in the Valley with activists that were concerned about the discrimination that was occurring among Latinos. And so they developed this organization to not only sort of directly help Latinos in terms of affordable housing, whether it's child care help or education needs, things like that. They're a very sort of widely programmed group. And then they also have a political aspect, so they want to get people involved in politics. And sort of it's sort of the teach a man to fish and you can feed him for a lifetime mentality that they have here. And it's grown into a really huge organization. It had revenues of about $400 million last year during the pandemic, according to its president. He told the Business Journal this, not me. But they made a lot of money on the pandemic in terms of the amount of money, the COVID relief funds that they were able to give out to people as loans. And so they were pass-through agency for about $7.6 billion in loans.
And also too here before we leave, we got about a minute left. This, right now all the attention is now focused on these Democratic lawmakers, but this is a bipartisan problem down here. Can you explain a little bit? We've seen conflicts of interest here in the recent past.
We have, and so with this situation, it's interesting because there's always this question of the influence and the compensation. So here with these 4 lawmakers, you have the compensation, and you wonder what the influence is. But we've seen situations in the past where you see the influence, and a really good example of this is David Gowan of Sierra Vista. He may not agree, but he owns a fireworks business, and he passed a law that expands the number of days that you can sell fireworks, and so that helped his business out. But the way the law works, again, this class of 10, it affected hundreds of fireworks sellers, so there's no conflict of interest under the law for David Gowan. And this has been a situation that we've seen with other legislators, some of them making considerable money.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Ray Stern with the Arizona Republic. It is good to see you, my friend. Be well. But still ahead, Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar in hot water for posting a video where he appeared to show him killing a fellow member of Congress. We're sitting down with one of his opponents who's calling for him to resign. And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar in hot water over a controversial video he tweeted out this week. The video shows Gosar as an anime cartoon character flying through the air, appearing to kill Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez before preparing to strike President Joe Biden. Now, violence, but Gosar isn't apologizing. Instead, he is saying that the video has been grossly mischaracterized and represents an ongoing feud between his Republican Party and Democrats over immigration policy. Now, in a written statement, Gosar tried to justify the social media post by saying, quote, "The cartoon depicts the symbolic nature of a battle between lawful and unlawful policies and in no way intended to be a targeted attack ad against Representative Cortez or Mr. Biden." Now, 10 House Democrats say they plan to introduce a resolution to censor Mr. Gosar. Here's Arizona Democratic Representative RUBEN Gallego.
Paul Gosar should not be a member of Congress. He claims it's symbolic, but that's not the point. The point is you're not responsible enough to know that I'm not going to go down that road.
And Twitter flagged the post for violating hateful conduct, and Gosar's office has deleted it from the social media platform. Now, Democratic candidate Judy Stahl, who is running to challenge Gosar in next year's election, is calling for Mr. Gosar to resign. She joins me now to discuss all of this. Hey, welcome to the show, Judy. I just want to, first of all, tell me what your reaction was when you first saw this video.
Dennis, I have only watched part of it. Thank you for having me here. I do not need to put myself down at the levels of Representative Gosar and his staff, who are spending our taxpayer dollars to represent me and people in my district in this disgraceful way. Representative Gosar is not doing what he needs to do for the people of this district. for the real problems that we've got. And he is fomenting ignorance. He is fomenting anger and hatred. And it is unbecoming of a congressman. He needs to step down.
Well, you saw part of the statement that he put out, and he's basically saying, like, look, this isn't real life. It's just a cartoon. In one point on Twitter, he posted, it's just a cartoon. Everybody should relax. Why are you not relaxing about this? After all, it is just a cartoon, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is that really what we want our Congress people to be doing, our elected leaders to be making cartoons? Is that what we want their staff to be doing with their time? To me, all that Representative Gosar is doing is attempting to create division. He's not really governing. He's not really leading. Leadership requires bringing people together. And that is the exact opposite of what he's doing. So in terms of the just relax, to me, that sounds like what is said to women when they're being treated badly. Oh, just relax. It's really, it's offensive. It doesn't move us forward. This whole idea of JK, I'm just kidding. That's extremely juvenile, especially when we have serious problems. And when he is representing a representative of our government, with him killing her, it's not a joke. It's not funny. It's not leadership.
Well, you know, this isn't the first time that, Mr. Gosar has been in the news for making controversial, comments on Twitter or, making controversial appearances with people. In fact, AOC actually called him out for, I believe, hanging out with some far-right socialists, national socialist type groups. But yet he wins election after election up there. He seems to be very popular with the voters up in your district. Why do you think it's different this time around?
Well, I think that there's a certain segment of the population here who are loyal to him. There are folks who have listened to maybe only one or two news sources that I would not necessarily consider to be news. And so if you have folks who are only listening to certain sources, not listening to the gamut, the full range, getting the full truth, then they're just going to stick with the guy with the R behind his name. It's incumbent upon me to make sure that the folks who are in my district do know what I stand for, that I get a chance to meet them, having a forum like this to be able to speak my truth. I've lived here for 30 years. I've worked with everyone on both sides of the aisle. I believe that I represent real American values, and I have friends who are Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. But what we need to do is we need to move forward in Arizona. We need to bring people together, and that is not what Representative Gosar has been doing. If it's all going to be just about hanging out with your friends and your pack, that's not the United States of America, and I won't allow that.
So this campaign that you're embarking on, then, is this just an anti-Gosar campaign, or are you offering different vision here for your district up there?
Oh, no, I'm offering a different vision. It's not just anti-Gosar, although that obviously is something that with his behaviors, actions, it becomes very clear what the distinction is. I am a leader. I am a person who has worked in healthcare my whole life. People trust me. I am truthful, honest, and transparent. I have a backbone, and I am absolutely committed to working with people to take care of the problems in this district. We need to, for the entire state of Arizona, protect our water resources. We need to acknowledge climate change. We need to take care, I will work to take care of our rural economy and make sure that our kids can graduate high school, college, and have decent jobs here. That they can come back and live here and raise their families here. And I will also do the work to make sure that we have every advantage for our retirees and veterans in my district. Underlying all of that and overriding all of that is my absolute commitment to our democracy, to being a representative who leads with integrity, with compassion, with empathy, and with concern for real people. Just one last thing about this. A government is supposed to represent the least of us. Government is here to protect the citizens. That is not what my opponent, the current rep, is doing. And I represent virtually everything that he does not, and I will represent everyone in this district.
All right, we'll have to wrap it up right there. That's Judy Stahl, one of the Democratic candidates seeking to challenge Mr. Gosar in the general election next year. Thank you very much for coming on the show. And up next, a former staffer who worked under Katie Hobbs just got awarded more than $2 million after she sued. The reason why she filed a lawsuit and what Hobbs has to say. That's coming up next. A federal grand jury just awarded a former black Democratic state legislative staffer $2.75 million in a race and discrimination case. Talonya Adams worked under Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who was the Senate minority leader at the time. Adams was fired after complaining that she made less money than her white male co-workers. Katie Hobbs is now running for governor as a Democrat. Her campaign spokesman released a statement saying that the Republican majority chief of staff acted as Adams's supervisor and was the one who decided to fire her. The spokesman added a statement saying, quote, "The state legislature, both in 2015 and today, is run by Republicans who pay their staffers more than the Democratic Senate staff, which is dramatically more diverse than the Republican staff. This problem is systemic. It persists today and needs to be fixed." Now, during her time in the legislature, Katie Hobbs consistently fought for pay increases for this Democratic staff. And with me now to discuss this are political consultants Marcus Dellartino and Roy Herrera. And Roy, I want to kind of start with you. Do you believe Katie Hobbs has explained her role in this terrible situation as adequately as she should be?
Well, first I want to commend Talonya for righting this wrong. It took several years. She represented herself in federal court. So I think it's a testimony to her courage and perseverance that she was able to prevail twice before a jury of her peers. But judging from her Twitter and some of the responses that she's given since the verdict came down, it seems as though she does not believe that Secretary of State Hobbs has taken responsibility for her role in what happened to Ms. Adams. And so as a result of that, I don't think that the questions are going to go away regarding Secretary of State's role. And of course, her response has been, "I should have been a better ally," but I imagine there are going to be questions about how she could have been and what she thinks she should have done instead. So I think it's going to continue.
And Marcus, when I ask you too, in her statement, it appears a little bit like she's trying to throw the Republicans under the bus for this, who've been controlling the legislature. Is that going to work?
No, it's not going to work. As a matter of fact, I'm expecting some TV ads on this particular subject. If it doesn't happen during the primary, it's certainly going to happen during the general. This is nearly $3 million worth of taxpayer money going to this staffer. And I mean, look, personally, I'd like to go to work for the state tomorrow and get fired for $3 million. It's absolute insanity.
Yeah, and it is a very serious and terrible situation that really happened over there. And Roy, I want to come back to you and ask you this. What are the ramifications here politically for Ms. Hobbs, who is right now the odds-on choice for everybody that she's leading this Democratic field in the Democratic primary for governor?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it's going to come down to her explanation going forward about her role in this. I agree with Marcus. I think simply blaming Republicans is not going to be enough. And so I think that she's going to continue to get questions about what occurred and what her role was in this, because as Ms. Adams has indicated in some of her public statements, and according to Secretary Hobbs' own testimony, she did have a role in what occurred. So that's going to continue. But also to Marcus's point, I certainly believe there's going to be TV ads and other political advertisements related to this attacking Secretary Hobbs no matter what happens.
All right, now let's pivot over to the other topic, one of the other topics of conversation we've had on the show today. Marcus, want to talk a little bit about the conflicts of interest down at the Capitol. Again, right now the focus is on these 4 Democratic lawmakers, but look, this party does not have a lock on these conflicts of interest. We've seen that down there for a number of years. Both parties have been included. Are there any solutions to fix this problem?
I mean, yes, it's certainly a tough week for the Democratic caucus here. But yeah, there's 100 good ideas that we could probably put into place. Will they happen? I'm doubtful. They need to be well thought out. They need to be vetted through the Attorney General's office. I think, frankly, somebody from the AG's office and somebody maybe from the Maricopa County Attorney's office should come up with some sort of process that works, that's more transparent. Because I'll tell you, I believe that this might just be the tip of the iceberg.
And Roy, does there need to be some sort of rule change down at the legislature, or maybe even a change in law to try to tighten down these conflict of interest rules, which are like so wide, as they say, you could drive a semi-truck through them?
I mean, I think so. And I think we've seen prior instances of actual conflicts of interest when you've got prior legislators who had ownership in businesses that they're taking votes on regarding the regulation of those businesses. So those are all the things that we have seen over a number of years that have screamed for ethics reform at the Capitol. But of course, when you're asking politicians to police themselves, the answer is that usually doesn't happen. And so to Marcus's point, I think if something were to occur, it needs to be vetted through a third-party agency, whether it's the Attorney General's office or somewhere else. So we get to a point where we're increasing disclosure and promoting better governance.
Yeah, and Marcus, finally, it just doesn't seem like there's any political will down there to try to fix this issue.
There very well may be, but it will be small and it will be short-lived. And I think probably most members will pivot to attacking lobbyists. And the fact of the matter is that doesn't solve your problem. This problem is contained within the legislature itself.
All right, and Roy, let's ask you a little bit about Paul Gosar's interesting week. My take is a little bit with this, violent video that he put out and all the consternation and controversy surrounding it. It's a little bit, judging from the recent past, maybe a win-win for everybody, the Democrats and Republicans in this, because it seems like, Gosar, he's going to be able to raise money off this, saying, hey, look at what the left is doing to me. And then, Democrats are making money off this, saying, how dare he, put out an anime cartoon depicting him apparently striking, killing a member of Congress as well as the Democratic president.
Well, it's I think an indictment on our current politics, where a video that promotes violence against another elected official, is somehow a political win for both sides. But I think, unfortunately, this is sort of the polarized environment we live in right now. I wish we were in a position where these kinds of things didn't occur ever, and that we would actually try to actually debate the real issues that are affecting everyday Arizonans instead of this kind of personal, violent, material.
And did you ever think, Marcus, that you'd see a time like this? Where a congressman would put out a video like this? Is this the type of behavior that we should be expecting from a congressman?
No, you shouldn't expect it, but you can't be shocked. To Roy's point, when you look about the amount of money that's rolling around in politics right now, you can't be shocked. You are literally paid to be the more outrageous you are, the more money you're able to raise off of it, and it's a problem with our system.
And is this, final question here, either one of you guys, this going to be any way of a problem for Gosar? I mean, I don't think so. As I said earlier, I think he's going to be able to raise money off it. And, his constituents, year after election cycle, re-elect this guy pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a problem whatsoever. And frankly, it'll be an afterthought here shortly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's an element of his base that actually probably likes this stuff, so it's not going to hurt him politically.
All right, guys. Well, thank you both for joining us here this week, but that is all the time we have tonight. But be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.